All right, what's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to the Right Mindset. And I just want you to know today I'm going to go over how one can go about finding their voice as a writer. Not me finding my voice as a writer, but how you can find your voice as a writer. Because why do you care how I found my voice as a writer? This is about you finding your voice. So it says, I know the lesson is, finding my voice as a writer, but the lesson isn't about how I found my voice as a writer. It's going to be about, just roll the thing. I'm so glad you're coming to another episode on the Make a Right. It's my other channel. Make a Right Left Here. MakeARightLeftHere.com. Do you have what it takes to make a right here? To the Right Mindset, and that you're joining this community to learn and develop. And by the way, remember, this is just another option of skills, tools, and talents that you can potentially try or mold into however you want. They're not the be all end alls. They're just something for you to do to try to get your mind right or to right. And, I would love to hear advice that you have. So if you have counter advice, throw it in the comments below. With that said, if you're new here or have been coming back, thank you. Remember to subscribe by clicking the bell icon, the subscribe button, so you can learn a little bit about the lessons on craft, analyzing, reviewing, storytelling, and of course, interviews with fellow writers as we celebrate the industry and talk shop together. Now, by the way, if you're an author or writer and you would like to be interviewed, not necessarily for your book, but to talk to you about your writing process and maybe some of your insight on how the industry is, please comment below and then we'll set up a way to talk and make it happen. So today's lesson is about finding my voice as a writer. I mean, your voice as a writer. So what is an author's voice? That's a good question. By the way, we have another video that really goes over what the difference between an author and a writer is. I'm just saying author because it's just somebody who is publishing books. Not that the book is published by a traditional publisher, but that you have a work, a published work. And by the way, published work mean that you just printed it out on your printer and you just have books that you wrote out. And they don't even have to be nicely covered. They're just, my point is, authors have a substance of a collection of things, and people could read those. They're there for people to read. Anyway, this is the best part about defining something. When it comes to what is an author's voice, we learn what it is so we can mold our efforts in training ourselves to use it the best way we can. So basically, when you learn something, when you could define it, or at least have an idea of what you want to consider it, it gives you I don't know if any of you have ever been in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. I've been Boy Scouts. They tell you when you're in the forest, look for a tree far away because you naturally walk to your right? So if you see the tree, you head to the tree. So even though the tree's far away, you know where the tree is, and you're going to walk in a straight line to the tree. So you have some direction, you know where you're going, right? So think of knowing how something works and at least breaking down the process, that it gives you a roadmap to hone your time to utilizing that tool and skill to develop whatever the case may be. So in this situation, we're going to asking, what is an author's voice? Believe it or not, the voice is you. Okay, it's how you write, right? So in other words, an author's voice is the way their personality comes through on the paper. More specifically, every choice an author makes defines their voice, or their brand, one might say, as an author. From word choice and sentence structure to tone and punctuation, for me, my chapter structures, the point of views I choose, even my themes are all going to define my voice as an author, just as they will for you. And you have complete control over that voice. And in the beginning, your voice is made up of what you do and do not Basically, it's made up of what you do and do not know right now as a writer. Now as a writer, meaning like you are limited by what you know now, but as you develop and learn more and understand, just descriptions, the way dialogue works, as that develops, you're going to find your voice and be able to control your voice a little bit more. Whereas right now, and you might be writing for 10 years. I'm just saying in general. I'm royal generalizing. you know, uh, you only know what you know. So you might not realize it yet, but you do still have a writer's voice, though that voice might not be the one you want. It will definitely be refined as you practiced. Okay, so you might be at the point of using generic word choices, but an author's voice comes alive through their stylistic mix of vocabulary, tone, point of view, and syntax that will help make words flow in a particular way. Please understand, characters also have voices, but we're specifically talking about you as a writer and your presentation of how you tell your stories. So think of this lesson as more about understanding your specific voice as an author and not necessarily the voices you give characters. Okay? So now that we know what an author's voice is, I do want to say that in time, you're going to be like, there are certain themes. Actually, let me say it this way. I do stand up comedy too, and when you watch a Bill Burr or a Louis C.K. or a Dave Chappelle or a Cat Williams or a George Carlin or a Richard Pryor, they have something to say, and the way they say it, their presentation, all that is their voice. The words they choose, the subjects, how they present the subjects, their mannerisms, the way they use their voice, their pauses. Dave Chappelle is like, the genius is in the silence, right? So I'm paraphrasing and probably slightly off with that, but ultimately he's saying it's okay to have silence on stage because that's when people get to think, right? Um, as a writer, as an author, you as well have control over honing that. And you might not necessarily know what you want to write about yet, other than, I'd love to tell a great story about X, Y, and Z. But it might not be your voice, your true voice. I know as a comedian, when I started, I told jokes just like everyone else, which were just, how can I make the audience laugh? This is kind of funny. I think that would be funny. Obviously, first, second, and third year comedians, all we do is talk about poop, sex, and somewhere in there, infidelity with family members, right? So we just say anything we can to make the audience laugh. We want to discuss them, Oh, don't. And then they're like, don't work blue. I'm going to work blue. It's not really about working blue. It's about working smart. And if your material is blue and dirty and whatever the case may be, but it's smart, it's okay to be vulgar. But vulgar for vulgar's sake isn't necessarily saying anything. And as I developed my comedic voice, I started learning what was important and interesting to me. I like to dive into the dynamics of basically our relationships with one another, our relationships with strangers, the restrictions of how our thoughts are our own, but not necessarily allowed to be heard sometimes, and how society and social societies place these restrictions or ideas, um, and I like to challenge those thoughts. I like to turn things upside down and really peek into it. And that's where I found my voice as a comedian. As a writer, though, as a novelist, and even my screenplays, there's something a little bit deeper that I want my pieces to say something. I want to have a social commentary on the world and like how important people are and communities and team mentality and loyalty and the ridiculousness of how people are isolated or segregated, or it's crazy to me how much we mess with people just because like racism doesn't make sense to me. So I like to write stories about how ridiculous it is to be racist and like how stupid hate is, and that it's just so vile and insane. Anyway, so I'm trying to say something through my writing, and that becomes my voice. And then obviously the style I choose to write that in and the way I present that becomes a lot of who I am as a writer. And Again, you might feel you have a voice now, and you might have a voice now, but that voice might not be honed to what it is you truly have to say. A story isn't necessarily filled with a voice. Even though that voice might be limited by, let me just, okay, there's a, takes place in 1940s, and somebody meets somebody, and then there's a MacGuffin, and Chekhov's gun says that they're going to meet their father at the end, or the mother, and whatever the case may be. Like, that's a story, but what are you saying? What are you truly saying with your stories? And that really helps you find your voice. But with that said, here's three things to help you find your voice. This is basically breaking down what it is I just rambled on with. First, you want to determine your point of view. And when I say point of view, I'm not saying like third person, first person, third person limited. you know, like, you know, what I'm talking about is, what is your purpose in writing? Do you have something to say that's important to you? You should have something to say. You don't really need to have it when you're first starting out. Obviously learn how to write, learn how to get your thoughts on paper, break through the fear of just, is this good or bad? You know what? Who cares? Just get it on the page. Just write. You're going to get better just with practice. But ultimately, do you have something to say that's important to you? Okay. For me, I just mentioned this like 2 seconds ago. I always include victory through teamwork and through family. And family can be found. Family doesn't necessarily have to be blood family, right? Because I believe people are important, and the people around you are important. So those are nice themes I like to have, even if they're not the main themes. I sneak those in. Okay. Also, a thing I usually say is be nice to everyone. You never know someone is or someone knows, right? I always try to sneak that in. And I got a couple other things. So if you read, watch, or pay attention to a lot of my stuff, when it comes to literature and everything like that, scripts, novels, you'll see I have a couple of repetitive things that I always throw in there as little little seeds of who I am and my interests. Okay, another thing, you are what you write. Okay, this is number 2 of the things that to help you find your voice. You are what you write. So how you write is who you are. Your sentence structure, the dialogue used for characters, and even how you use your chapters to add to your voice, your brand, and your style. That's right. A lot of times people say, how many chapters should I have? How long should each chapter be? Believe it or not, a chapter could be a sentence. It could be a page. You can use chapters for pacing. You could use chapters for tension. You could use chapters for emotional beats. You could use chapters just straight up. You could just be like, you know what? I know there's 27 plot points in a story, from the ordinary world all the way to the resolution. And I'll make every chapter a plot point. So the whole chapter will be exploring that plot point. And there you go, 27 chapters, make them at 3,000 words each. And now you have whatever that is. I believe, what is it? 27 times 3,000. I think it's 8,000. Yeah, it's 80,000. So it's 81,000, right? So there you go, 81,000. That's a book. Okay. So, I mean, you could use the chapters, logically. You could use them scientifically, or you could use them with a little creativity, right? So, a lot of activities. Okay. The third thing is, write down what's important to you. Now, I just basically was saying this. Your voice will come through you when you write stories that interest you. Don't write for an audience, write for yourself. Kevin Smith wrote Clerks because he wanted to see the kids in his neighborhood and their conversations up on a screen. Basically, he wanted to hear the conversations that him and his friends were having. Spike Lee makes movies that are important to him, that bring light to his communities and say something about injustice. Now, the thing is, again, when I was a comedian, or even when I was a musician, I would hear people all the time like, you want to make everybody in the room laugh. And as I met more and more successful comedians and more successful musicians, the theme of that was different than the theme of those I was coming up with, because the people I was coming up with weren't necessarily quote unquote successful. They were trying to make a career, and their thing was like, you want everybody in the room to laugh. And then successful comedians or musicians were saying, no, you want your audience to laugh. And what's the difference with that? When Dennis Miller, I just gave my age away, he's a political comedian. So when he tells his jokes, he's not telling political jokes to the people who don't like political jokes. His audience that comes to him, that are drawn to his brand, the people that he pulls to his shows, are there for political humor. George Carlin's audience came to him. Andrew Dice Clay, who was an extremely controversial comic, there's no way people who didn't like his comedy were spending hundreds of dollars in travel to come see Andrew Dice Clay. Um, because in their mind, they were like, why would I don't like this. It's the same reason some people go see Black Sabbath, some people see Motley Crue, some people see Slipknot, some people see, Dave Matthews Band, the Grateful Dead. They have a draw. There's an audience that wants to see that. And the Grateful Dead does not drive to somebody's house and go in the house and play music and say, what do you want to hear? They go to a location and then people come to that location and they perform. So think of your books as a location to draw in the audience that's interested in what you have to say. The stories that interest you, if you write the stories that are important to you, you're going to put some heart and some passion into it, and you're going to care about that story. And then people are going to see the quality in that story and reflect their own beliefs and emotions onto relating to those stories, which is basically an emotional connection to your brand, because we all know marketing is designing a brand to build awareness, which creates interest that ultimately generates sales. So people buy into your brand emotionally, and that's where you get people going, I want more. So think of writing for yourself artistically. And then when you're done with the book, think of a business brain. And in that business brain, you go, all right, how do I market this? How do I advertise my brand to an audience or to the masses, so the masses can dictate if they appreciate my brand or not? Okay. And keep in mind, and say market the book. You want to advertise your brand, like what you stand for and the themes that are important. Does that mean not to show your book? No. You could show your book cover and everything, but make sure the themes of what's important to you is there and the themes of the book are there. Okay. So that's how you find your voice. Basically, write what's important to you for you. Don't write for an audience, because you'll always be chasing the audience. And if you're always chasing the audience, you'll never have time to hone what's important to you. My final thoughts. Okay, I got some final thoughts. I always have thoughts, though. What a lot of professional writers realize is that your voice finds you as you explore the things that matter most to you. And at times, your career can determine your voice for you. How does that work? Well, let me tell you. You might think your books are XYZ, but when publishers or agents end up with your book, it turns out they see it as an ABC. A really good example. Well, first, you when that happens, you have to make a choice about if that's what you want to be known as or not. Okay, because you might see yourself as one thing, and then agents and publishers see you as something else, and your audience might see you as something else. And you have to say, do I want to lean into that and accept it, and accept what I thought my presentation was A, but apparently it's B. So I'm just going to keep writing what I thought was A and keep presenting what I thought was A, even though I'm accepting that it's B. And James A. Owen says a lot about finding your voice is getting out of your own way. And, he stated in an interview that he started out by writing books, and it wasn't his choice to decide what his books were classified as. He simply wrote the story he was excited to tell, and it was a children's editor who liked the books he was writing. He wrote what he loved to write, and others branded him as a children's YA author. We don't always know what our voice is until others confirm it. We might believe our voice is one thing until a group of people tell us differently. And when that happens, think to yourself, is this the voice I wanted to share with the world? If it isn't, you have to reword the way you write to find the idea you had in your head of what your voice is. Or if you love what you write and the subjects that are being written, then and the world sees it as one thing, but they're not telling you not to write what they're just like, I love what you write. It's children's YA, it's children's YA work, and you're like, oh, I thought this was like dark horror adult. You have to say to yourself, well, I'm going to continue to write what I believe I'm writing as dark horror adult, but they're going to classify it as children's YA. So whatever. And in the interview, uh, it was really funny because they were like, hey, your stuff is children's YA. And James is like, James A. Owen. He's like, well, is it really? And then he turned around and he saw all of these Harry Potter books that he had on his bookshelves that he loved and he collected. And he's like, it's children's YA. So he just kind of accepted it. So even when it contradicts what you thought it was in the first place, as long as you're allowed to maintain your voice without alteration, who cares what they label it as? As long as your voice is allowed to maintain without correction, then stay the course and allow people to call it whatever you want. Even if you're just like, it's not dark horror. This is supposed I thought this was romantic comedy. And people are like, no, you write dark horror. And you're just like, all right, I write dark horror. But then don't change what you write. Just keep writing what you thought was romantic comedy. Anyway, that's my point. In conclusion, just so you know, the next video in this particular series is going to be a fun step back through time at the journey of author Octavia E. Butler and where she started to where she ended up as an author. We sometimes find stress in our author's path because of whatever reasons are hitting us hard. Not everyone's journey is the same, but everyone has a journey, and sometimes you never know where it can go, so keep on pushing. Basically, we're going to do a video series about Octavia E. Butler, and not just because I love the name Octavia, but because we look at successful people and we get inspired by them, but it's nice to see their journey, and maybe we could relate to their journey and see, oh, they started late or they had adversities and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to do a video in this particular series that kind of touches on that, okay? And with that said, who's the author you love most because of their writing voice? Let me in the community know in the comments below. And of course, as always, want to learn a little bit more about improving your craft, insight on the industry, and hearing from fellow authors, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. And then I guess that's it, really. I guess we're done with this video. So keep developing the right mindset, and I'll see you next time.